Hello everyone and welcome to Linux Forensics here at Pentester Academy. In this video, we're going to take a little deeper look at the superblock. In order to do this, we're going to use a freeware tool, the Active@Disk Editor. So if you point your browser at disk editor, that's disk-editor.org, you will see the Active@Disk Editor. Now they will tell you you can download the Windows version and you can also download the Linux version. Now I'll give you a little bit of a warning here. It turns out the Linux version is really the Windows version, just running under Wine. If you're not familiar with Wine, Wine stands for Wine is not an emulator, and it is a program that allows you to run Windows programs under Linux. And it does this by translating Windows system calls into Linux system calls. So when you download the Linux version, it will install itself as a Wine utility, and then you will have a nice little disk editor which can read various Linux file systems and also Windows file systems. So I've already downloaded this tool. So I'll run active@. It'll install the appropriate icons and such for you. And you'll get something that looks kind of like this. Now, if you have some recently loaded images, depending on the version of Active@ that you're running, you might see this down here. You can open a disk. Now keep in mind that if you try to do this on your Linux system, it will only open the fake hard drive for Wine and not your actual hard drives. You can open a file if you just want to hex edit a file, or you can open a disk image, which is normally what you want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and select a disk image, and it opens. And here is the start of my image. I have a MBR, a master boot record, and it's pointing me to the two partitions. There's an X2 partition of 16 gigabytes, and there's an extended partition that contains inside of it a swap partition. And we've seen this already because we've looked at this. Now, if I click on the My Computer tab, I will see these two partitions. So here's my first partition under local disk, and it says 1:, and the other one is under local disk 2:. Right? So this is my swap space, not interested, and this is my actual file system. So from this tab, I can actually browse into my file system if I so choose. So for example, if I click on Home, I will see John, and then I will see this hidden folder, .john with two N's. We already talked about this, and this is something an attacker did in order to try to hide a home directory. So I'm going to go back to my disk image, and before I do that, I'm going to give you a little tip with this tool. If you click on a partition and then say Open in Disk Editor, you get a much better view because now you get a logical view into the volume, which in the case of Windows partitions makes this much more easy to use. So for us, we can click on Navigate, and there's only a couple places we can go. We can go to a specific sector or offset, or to the superblock. On a Windows file system, you might see things like the FAT, the second FAT, etc., depending on what kind of file system that is. Okay, so here I am already on the superblock. So I'm at the first superblock, And if I look over here on the left under templates, it is decoding this information for me. So what is in the super block? As we said, it has the total number of inodes, 1,048,576. The total number of blocks, 4 million. How many reserved blocks? Blocks that are not part of this file system, things that come before it. 209,702. How many blocks are free? How many inodes are free? Where's the first data block? It's block 0. What's the block size? 2. And what's the fragment size? Also 2. There are 32K blocks per group, fragments per group, 8K inodes per group. When was this last mounted? It was mounted on March 12th. And when was it last written to? A little bit after that. How much has this been mounted? What's the maximum mount count that it will support? A signature. What's the state? The state is a good state. It has been unmounted cleanly. What's the version? When was it last checked for consistency? It was checked on the 5th. What's the revision of this file system? Normally it will be 1. How big are the inodes? Half a sector or 256 bytes. This is in block group 0. And what are the compatible features? What are the incompatible features? And what are the read-only compatible features? We saw this in a previous video, actually interpreted for us by FSstat. What is the globally unique identifier for this volume, which we've seen before? This one doesn't have a name, but it does have a directory where it was last mounted. It was last mounted as the root directory. And some journaling information. We'll talk more about this in later videos. File system was created on the 5th. Journal inode backup. We'll talk more about that in future videos. The minimum number of bytes in an inode is 28. Flexible block group size is 4. We'll talk more about that in the future. And there are no errors here. It says the first time an error happened was in 1969. In other words, never. And there was no inode involved in that error. So you see there's quite a bit of information in here. And again, this information is repeated as we go through each of the groups. This allows us to recover a drive if one of the superblocks is bad. In particular, if the first superblock, which is sort of the master superblock, if you will, is somehow bad, then we're still good. Well, that's all for this video. As always, if you're enjoying these videos here at Pen Tester Academy, please tell a friend. We'll see you soon.